Hello, Kirana, and welcome to Kukicast, the podcast that's all about the Cook Islands. This is the place to meet people who have their own insight into this Polynesian paradise in the South Pacific. I'm John Roberts, and this edition is all about Aitutaki, 259 kilometres north of the capital island of Rarotonga, and the second most visited of the Cook Islands. If you asked a child to paint a picture of a desert island, it would be reminiscent of Aitutaki. White sandy beaches and tiny palm-fringed islets scattered across a stunningly beautiful lagoon, which stretches for 50 square kilometres. My guest today is the island's mayor, Nick Henry. He and his family own and operate the luxury resort of Tamanu Beach. It's located on the lagoon, so, of course, I had to ask him first about that jewel in the island's crown, and to try to put into words why it's so special.
It's the bluest of blues. It's been, quoted as one of the most beautiful lagoons in the world. And in a previous life, I voyaged on a traditional waka for 2 years and sailed through the Pacific, and perhaps just over 100 lagoons that I would have seen in that 2-year period. And Aitutaki stands out.
The sea life in the lagoon is pretty remarkable as well. Tell me something about that.
Yes, it is, and it's only going to get better. Last month, we reinstated a millennia-old tradition throughout Polynesia. It's called Ra'ui, and this is where we put marine reserves in place. And we've established 4 of those in strategic areas around our lagoon. And these are just only going to increase the amount of sea life that we have in there. And at the moment, what you will see in Aitutaki Lagoon is an abundance of the green turtles. We just have so many of them there. It's fantastic.
They're a threatened species, aren't they?
Not in Aitutaki. Not any longer.
I'll tell you one of the things that struck me when I went snorkeling in the lagoon, the giant clams.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so those, the giant clams were actually introduced in 1997. They were brought in from Orpheus Island, which is a small island off the coast of Australia, just off Townsville. And these clams grow very, very quickly. And the Aitutaki paua, the clam, hasn't recovered. We've had a program for almost 3 decades, and it's still struggling. But the clam itself is a very social creature. They're quite intelligent. Once they spawn, and the little guys that are wriggling and floating through the lagoon, as they travel along, if they don't see a cluster of adults, then they just continue. And so it's really important that we can put those clusters together, and the way to do that was to bring these giant clams in from Australia. They grow so quickly, and then build these clusters. But yeah, it hasn't quite worked as well as we'd hoped.
You talked about what you're doing to try and enhance the sea life, but you're facing a challenge like the rest of the world from climate change. How are you addressing that?
Yeah, well, there's a number of challenges with climate change. But I think probably the best thing that we've done in recent months is formulate a total lagoon management plan. And so this is how everything that touches the lagoon, how we can manage those impacts. And so this starts from the coast, from the shoreline, and increasing what we call nutrient traps. As the climate changes, we're getting a lot more rain falling in a shorter period of time. And so that creates a lot more erosion, and then you're getting brown soil runoff into the lagoon, and the brown soil will kill the coral. So a nutrient trap, one of the most traditional traps, is actually a taro patch. So taro is a root crop, and we have taro patches that run around 60% of the coast of the main island on Aitutaki. And getting those reinstated, they will trap all of these nutrients and slowly filter them, so the impact won't be so sudden along the coast. So that's going to be one of the things that will assist with the recovery in our lagoon.
I said it's It's the jewel in your crown, if you
It
like. It
is.
is absolutely stunning. What would you say is the best way for a first-time visitor to see that lagoon?
Oh, you've got to go out with the locals. You've got to join one of the many lagoon cruises. These people these guides have been on our lagoon for over 3 decades, and they know exactly where to go on which day. And so, traveling with one of the organized lagoon cruises is an absolute perfect way to experience Aitutaki Lagoon.
It's a destination that's particularly popular with honeymooners, and you've even got a place called Honeymoon Island.
Yes, we do.
So, what is the attraction? Why are honeymooners looking to Aitutaki rather than perhaps Rarotonga?
Well, I think, when you're on honeymoon, you don't particularly want to be amongst a crowd of others. And so, even when the island is at capacity, you're still going to find deserted beaches. And when I say deserted, if you look to your left and you saw 4 people, and you look to your right and you saw 6 people, and you're looking at least a kilometer either direction, then that's a crowd.
Apart from the lagoon cruise, what
Yes.
else would you say people must do if they visit the island?
Well, if they're visiting through the months July to October, then the whale watching is a once in a lifetime experience. And both in Rarotonga and Aitutaki, the whales come right up close to the reef, and you can actually get very, very close to them. And it's one of the few countries that we still allow people to get in the water with the animals as well. And so, for many, it's a life changing experience. You're in the ocean, and maybe between 60 and 200 meters of water, and it's like a bus going past you underwater. It's quite impressive.
Are the whales friendly?
Yes, yeah, yes, absolutely. When they come, they come at that time of year to calf, and so if you are in the water and a mother and the calf is coming alongside, the mother will always put herself between you and the calf. And, one of the tricks really is, well, to keep everybody safe, you always make sure that you're on the land side or the reef side of the creatures. So if they are uncomfortable, they can just turn left and out they go into the deep ocean.
Anything else you would add to that list of must-dos?
And Aitutaki just has a community that is quite different from anywhere else. And so one of the must-dos would be joining one of the cultural evenings on the island. And when you go there, whilst they are developed for visitors, no matter which hotel you're at, you're going to be in amongst at least 40-50% locals within that audience. So that's a must-do.
That's a good point. Where do you stay? There seems to be quite a range of accommodation. There's five-star luxury.
Yes,
There
there is.
are villas over the lagoon itself,
Yes.
and there seem to be smaller places. So tell me a bit about where people can stay.
Yeah, I mean, like most tropical destinations, we have a good variety of accommodation from your budget through to your 5-star. I think one of the beautiful things about Aitutaki is that the resort that you're going to stay with, or the bungalow or the holiday home, you're going to meet the people that own that. And that's a really special thing. You know that the money, the hard earned money, the pounds that you have earned are going to support a local family. And that makes a huge difference to us. That's tourism working for the Cook Islands.
There's a lot of talk these days about ethical tourism.
I haven't
How,
heard of that.
I don't believe that for 1 minute. What do you understand by ethical tourism? Because
Yeah.
you're talking about all these beautiful features of your
Yes.
island, but isn't there a risk that too many tourists could spoil it?
Yes, of course. There is that risk. But I think um, before people used the term, we were already operating ethical tourism in the Cook Islands since the very first visitor came. It's not something new to us. This kind of hospitality in right throughout Polynesia comes naturally, and it's because we enjoy doing it. So that's the primary motive. The secondary motive, of course, you've got to make a profit along the way, otherwise you can't continue to do it. But I think that's the difference, and so ethical tourism, I think, is just a byproduct really for the Cook Islands. We were already there 60 years ago.
The pace of life on Aitutaki is very different from that of Rarotonga, and Rarotonga's hardly a bustling, roaring city, is it? So is that one of the things that people look for?
Yes, of course. It's often regarded as the Tahiti of 50 years ago or the Hawaii of 75 years ago. Aitutaki is at a crossroads at the moment, and we we have a fantastic 30-year plan ahead of us, which talks about the ownership of our industry and the rate of progress. My grandfather was the first prime minister for the Cook Islands, and he always said, let no one in the tribe be forgotten and no one in the village be left out. And when you translate that into tourism terms, basically what it means is that as we progress as a country, we've got to ensure that we move at the rate of the slowest person. So then the gap between the haves and the have-nots is very, very fine. That way, when you come to the Cook Islands, you will realize that our distribution of wealth is extremely well done. We don't have homeless people in the Cook Islands. We don't have beggars in the Cook Islands. So, with that in mind, I think we've progressed quite well as far as tourism is concerned.
You've got quite a distinguished ancestry. You were talking there presumably about Albert Henry, who
Yes,
the first Prime Minister.
correct.
You're the mayor of Aitutaki.
That's correct. Yes.
What does that involve?
Well, I think I'm changing the role of the mayor, and becoming a little bit more hands-on, perhaps. So, over the years, there's been a number of amazing plans that have been drawn up for our islands, but often they're not quite understood and certainly not implemented. And so, when I walked into this job a few months ago, or should I say, when I was voted into this job a few months ago, there were already plans in place, and it was just a matter of dusting them off, running a small update on them, and now we're at the exciting part of trying to implement these plans for the future of Aitutaki.
So 30 years from now, what's Aitutaki going to look like if your plans come to fruition?
It's going to be a little bit shinier than it is today. The lagoon is going to be healthier. The population, I'm hoping the base population will grow. At the moment, we're 1,700 people. We have a target in mind of only 3,000. But that will allow, when you get a base population of that will allow the guy who owns the cafe on the corner to actually have a holiday. So at the moment, they are week to week. And if he has a bad week, then it becomes a real challenge for the other 51 weeks of the year.
You make a very strong case for people visiting Aitutaki, but the number of visitors is a tiny fraction of those who visit Rarotonga. Why do you think that is?
That's not quite correct. So we get about 170,000 visitors into the Cook Islands now, and 45,000 of those come to Aitutaki. So for a base population of 1,700, we're doing okay. And in fact, the island government at the moment is quite comfortable with the number that we're receiving. And rather than focusing on growing that number, what we need to be focusing on in the short and medium term is improving the service that we provide and improving the product that we provide for tourism.
You've got a very healthy number of visitors.
Yes.
How much can it grow at the moment without spoiling what is so special about the island?
Well, the growth is limited by the number of beds. And so at the moment, within our plan, we are looking at developments between 10 and 12 bungalows. And so that's adding another 20 or 24 rooms per project. And there are not many projects in the pipeline. We're not at the point yet where we have to create some sort of moratorium or put a stop on that. But it is certainly past time that we have um, a, a regulation in place, and we monitor very carefully how our tourism product grows and develops over the coming years.
I don't know how you'll feel about answering this particular question. If you're not comfortable, please say so.
I'll just clip it around the
ear. But you talked about what you're doing to protect the assets of the island.
Yes.
But there are fears internationally about deep sea mining.
Yes.
Which could have a disastrous effect on not just your island, but all of the Cook Islands. How do you view that?
Well, I've been quite fortunate. I attended the 50th Seabed Mineral Conference, which was held in Rarotonga last year. I also went aboard one of the research vessels, and on board that, you had environmentalist scientists, you had marine scientists from various universities who were neither in favor or against seabed mining. And I think what you need to understand, the seabed nodules that we're talking about in the Cook Islands are resting in less than 8 inches of silt. So when we're talking mining, we're not digging mountains out of our seabed. We're scraping the bottom, perhaps even just hoovering it up. I've seen live footage of the nodules that are laying on the seabed floor, and they look like little avocados that are just scattered over the seabed. The quantity that is within the Cook Islands with current technology could take up to 100 years to harvest all of it. The interesting thing is when you go to the east of us into the Tahitian waters, there's nothing. And you go north of us into Kiribati, there's nothing. And you go west of us, there's nothing. So, we've been very blessed with this asset. The other part of it was we were in 5,011 meters of water the day I was on board. And they sent down a small scoop. It's about a cubic meter, 5,011 meters, and they scooped up these nodules. And on top of that was probably about 30 liters of water, seawater. And so the scientists that were on board are scooping this water out and then analyzing it for what may be, if anything, living down at that depth. So this exploration is now in its third year. There's another couple of years remaining before they start or before they decide whether to open this up or not. I think that a lot of the media that has been around the world is a little bit distorted, to be fair, and they put the seabed nodules in the same category as fracking or gas mining or oil mining on the ocean floor. It's a totally different ballgame, totally different.
So it sounds as though at the moment you're reasonably comfortable about that. What one reason would you give someone to visit Aitutaki?
One reason? Well, yeah, it would have to be the lagoon. It would have to be the lagoon. Aitutaki Lagoon is amongst the most stunning. She changes her skirt a number of times throughout the day. So as the clouds come over and as the sun rises and sets, the colors of the lagoon change right throughout the day. I don't know how many times I've been on that lagoon and been out to One Foot Island, but it still takes my breath away.
You've reminded me of something I was going to ask you about, because I get a lot of queries about One Foot Island.
Yes.
There's quite a story, a legend around that. So tell me the story.
So very, very briefly, a father and son were fishing in waters that they shouldn't be fishing in. And another opposing tribe chased them down. The son ran ashore and hid in a tree. The father walked over the son's footprints. So when the tribe who was chasing them down arrived, they only saw one footprint. So when we say Tapu Aitai, which is 1 foot island, we actually mean 1 footprint island.
And it looks like a big foot as well.
It does. Yeah, interestingly, when you get an aerial shot of it, it does look like a foot. You're quite right. Your right foot.
Many thanks. Thank you very much indeed. I shall practice my very poor Maori, Cook Islands Maori, here and say mataki mata.
Maitaki atupaka. In Aitutaki you say maitaki atupaka.
Nick Henry, Mayor of Aitutaki, and a great ambassador for a great island. Join me again soon for some more unique insights into the Cook Islands through the eyes of those who know them best. That's Kukicast. Thank you for listening.